I think, yes. So, yeah, welcome to our presentation here at the conference. We are very happy to be here with you today, and I enjoyed a lot your presentation, Martin, and I think we can connect a bit to this on another perspective. And as Armin said, my name is Katharina Riebe, and with me are my colleagues Sabrina Hebner and Armin Varmaz, because we together write this paper and do this research. And we are all working at the University of Applied Science in Bremen at the economic department. And today we would give you a brief insight into our research with the topic sustainable financial literacy. So, and I will start with a little opener, and I ask you which month is today and currently, and we all know it's November, and this is very special because in some parts of the world, especially in Canada, November is a financial literacy month, and I think this is totally great. And we have currently the 11th edition of this financial literacy month. And I will give you a short notice from Judith Robertson. She is a commissioner of the Financial Consumer Agency of Canada. And as she said, this is a challenging time. The financial marketplace is complex and increasingly digital. And many Canadians are continuing to struggle with the financial challenges caused by the pandemic. Over the past 18 months, we have all recognized the importance of resilience in every aspect of our lives. Our finances are no different. And I think this is a great brief, short insight on what we face today, not even in the pandemic, but as well in financial literacy. And the slogan of them is "Make change that counts." And hopefully we do this a bit today and also with our research. And first of all, I want to give you an insight what is financial literacy and special, and plus the added sustainability. Financial literacy is important for different aspects in life, and especially in social participation, financial decision-making, retirement planning, and so on. And financial literacy means, in the current state of science, the concept is a multidimensional, and it's part of basic education and can be subject to influencing factors like socio-demographic, individual behavior, education, training, and so on. And the basis developing is by the OECD. It calls financial literacy is knowledge and understanding of financial concepts and risk, the skills, motivation, and confidence to apply such knowledge and understanding in order to make effective decisions across a range of financial contexts to improve the financial well-being of individuals and society, and to enable participation in economic life. And we expand this definition of financial literacy to incorporate the factor of sustainability, and therefore sustainable investment, which describe financial investment processes, additionally considering the ESG issues, that means environmental, the social, and the corporate governance. And there is a widespread uncertainty about how private investors understand and evaluate sustainable investments. Many like the idea, as we see, of financing sustainable investment, but have only a vague idea about the concept of it and how it relates, especially to investment performance. And in general, it is also crucial to identify how sustainable investments relate to return. But today we want to measure and analyze sustainable financial literacy, and we develop and implement a questionnaire among young adults. And as I said above, also sustainable financial literacy will include multiple dimensions like risk aversion, as well as knowledge about finance and, of course, sustainability. And additionally, we control for personal characteristics like logical thinking and personal traits. And in this study, the measure of financial literacy, as all may well know, is based on the so-called Big Three. The Big Three are core questions and represent the essential financial concepts of interest rates, inflation, and risk diversification. They are very great because they're adapted worldwide, and financial literacy surveys and research and provide a standardized means of comparison across national borders. And for the fund selection, I explain later. For a little experiment, I refer to a study of Lagerquist. And finally, the personal traits and personal opinion, we refer to Kerner with the so-called Big Five for personality diagnostics. And so we jump into the empirical study. We try to measure and analyze sustainable financial literacy young adults. Young adults means age range between 18 to 25, it depends on literature. We have an initial sample about 6,000 respondents, and that means currently we try the survey to put in range on our study. Our students here at the University of Bremen and the University here of Applied Science. 198 persons access the survey currently, and we have about 102 who have give full information. It's a quite large questionnaire, we must say. You need about 15 till 40 minutes to answer our questions. And what is very interesting, you see in the last row, we give additional material, especially for the experiment, to describe some words or to explain what we mean with sustainable form, what mean governance, and so on. And only 19 participants have read this additional material. And this is response rate is compared to other literature, what we found. When we have additional material, the most didn't read it. We get a bit deeper into the questionnaire. And first of all, I'd like to, not this way, but I can't. Hopefully you can see my mouse, so I can switch a bit into. One question we ask is, imagine that you saved a fixed amount every month, for example, 50 euros. And with this in mind, answer the following question. Which characteristics make an investment more attractive? And we have a scale range from doesn't matter, it's not important for me, it's somewhat important, and it's very important. And you can see we have 4 bars here in this graphic, and the first of it is return of the investment. And of course, as we already think about, is that for the majority of the participants, the return is, as well as the risk, very similar, important, or rather somewhat important for them. That's common. As we think, and on the other hand, we have an ecological as well as a social impact. And here the majority of the participant thinks as well for ecological as social is less important compared to return and risk. So we have a little difference in between. You can see this is not at all, this is very, very low in return and risk. And so it's the common thing I do in investments. So my return and the risk I do have to face is very important for me, and the ecological and social impact not so in this comparison. It's for only a minority important and very important. But we get deep into it because we have more specialized. And so we also ask the young adults what other thought they have about their own savings. And what surprisingly, we have young adults between 18 and 25, we remember, but the majority thinks let me face this, yes, the last one, I want to the last bar. This is very important. So they have faced in a young age, savings are important for me. And of course, as well, you can see we have there's a scale from high to low. The dark is very high, and so it's in the minus too, so above. And also the importance of the return on savings is very high for the most. So they think about saving; it's important for them, and of course, the return, as we see on the other chart. What is very surprising for us is that they're concerned about bank activities. So they think about, when I give a bank or do an investment and I give them my money, what do they do with it? So I don't think that when I was in that young age that I think about this. And the overwhelming majority, and yes, you can see it's all dark green, and this reinforces, of course, the current social situation, that they are concerned about climate change. We ask, really, are you concerned about climate change, human rights, and environmental pollution? And that really shows that the whole thinking about, yes, it's important, and I'm concerned about a lot. This bar shows what they think about the return of ESG funds compared to conventional. And it's interesting to see that about half of the participants think that the return of an environmental and a sustainable fund will be higher than a conventional or a fund with no ESG preference. And also it is quite, so we can add high or not so high, and equal. This part is more on an equal base, and this is lower. So mostly we think, and if we all see also in literature, that they mostly say ESG funds perform less than a conventional fund, but our young adults, our participant thinks at least half that is maybe higher or at least equal to a regular, a conventional fund. But this we can go a little bit deeper into when we ask them some different questions. So we check it out. Now we go to the experiment, what I said earlier. And our experiment was also in this survey, and we presented the participants 5 different situations. And in this different 5 situations, they had to decide between 3 different fonds. And these fonds were the main feature where they had to be choice between one convention, always one convention of the 3 one, and 2 with a ecological, social, or governance aspect. And we concentrate today on the sustainable fund and ecological and social. And you can see on this graph, the dot in black, hopefully you can see it, is the conventional fund. Underneath, the green one is, of course, the ecological one, and red, as a party here, is the social fund. So there you can see the dot with the different funds, and this was one. They have to decide in these 5 different situations which fund they will select. Here on this x-axis, you see the risk difference, and of course on the y-axis, the return on that. And you can see that the green, the ecological fund, had quite a low risk, but also quite a low return. And above of that is the conventional fund, which had the same risk in this situation, but had a much higher return. And on the other hand, you have the social fund, which has a high risk compared to the other one, but has such an equal return to the conventional fund. And so you can see the differences between the ecological fund and the conventional fund. In return is the willingness to forego returns for the participants. If I decide I want to put my main topic on sustainability, I have the same risk as the conventional, but I'm willing to give a big return less than when I choose the conventional fund. And the same you can see with the risk. When I decide to take the social fund, we have the difference in risk. So I have the willingness of the participants that show that I took additional risk, but I take this far and have the same return in the conventional. Because the conventional theory often said, okay, I choose the far which has the highest return and the lowest risk. So if we, on an economic way, all our participants need to choose this fund because it has the lowest risk and the highest return. But we have a different picture here. And you can see that we have a majority which really decide to go for the sustainable funds. We have for 35% of the participants choose the ecological fund with much lower return than the conventional. 25%, a quarter of the whole participants choose the conventional fund, which is, so to say, the best in this case, in case of risk and return, and about 40, that's the majority, choose the social fund and take a lot more risk than the other ones and have the same return. So they are willing to take more risk in advance to get a social impact. And here also they decide to choose the ecological fund to take less return for a more ecological impact. And on the other graph, we have different choice in another situation. And here you can see similar that the majority had chosen the sustainable fund. Here we have the decision about for 2 ecological funds and 1 conventional. You can see the conventional fund they didn't choose at all, only 5%. And so the other ecological fund is very similar to them. So I take the same return and the same risk as a conventional. So everyone said, okay, yes, I can do some sustainable impact. I can choose this one. So this is the same decision. But what's interesting is 40% decide to go for an ecological fund, which has, yes, less risk. So maybe they're risk averse, but they have less return than the other ones. So a majority think, okay, I'm willingness to forego in return and have an ecological impact. Of course, it's more on the low risk side. To analyze a bit this and to deeper this only measure the experiment. So we will go deeper and we model, we create a model, and I only want to go on short notice because we ran out of time, I see. Yes, I have it inside. We have all the presentation afterwards, and we base our model on Fishbein, which is an integrative behavior approach, and Gopinath. And we have observable data as well as latent data, which creates one, and we go on for this experiment. And so we have a result, and because this is overwhelming and too big to read, we want to start I split it in parts, and so we can go some interesting insights of it. So hopefully you can see my mouse. We have about 8 specifications. And we start first of all because every fund said this, we have the return and risk, and you can see overall of all specifications we have a high significance and return, and we have it all on the positive side, or a positive sign. And when the return increases, of course, the probability of selecting a sustainable fund increases. That's very interesting to see. And on the second one, we can see we are, of course, look for the gender one here. And we have a more demographic variables. And you can see that the female is significant. The probability of selecting a sustainable fund increases when I'm a female. And this is very interesting. Maybe we can discuss it later. And here we can see the other ones are not so significant. And I will quickly move on to the third specification, which is very interesting because we control for personal characteristic and personal traits. And we ask the participants to characterize themselves. E.g., if I'm spontaneous, yes, or do I think a lot about the future or something like that. And it's interesting that this diligence is called, hopefully I can pronounce it correctly, conscientious. And it means if you have a low conscientiousness, the probability increases that I buy a sustainable form. As well, in cognition, it means if you have a high value, the probability increases of buying a sustainable form. That means, in particular, I say very on low level, if I don't think too much and I don't want to ask if something is right, or I want to go deeper into something, I decide to go for a sustainable form. That's quite interesting.
Katharina, you're running out of time.
Yeah, maybe not 2-3 minutes. I have to check which is very significant, and you can see, of course, on that part, climate change. Yes, if I'm concerned about it, if I get it, so I'm willing, the probability increases, of course, to buy a sustainable form. But on the other side, we also have this one, what I talked earlier, or what we all said about the willingness to forego maybe in return, to get the chance on return. I accept the possibility to lose money. And first of all, you can see that if I agree to this statement, I'm willing to risk losing money. If there's also a chance on return, the probability of selecting a sustainable fund decreases in that way. So this is quite interesting. These parts are, as always, if I have a ESG preference, I always choose this. And of course, because we also have this based on financial literacy, we control for these big three. And we can see if someone answers the question for financial literacy correctly, then the probability decreases to select a sustainable form. That's interesting. And also it's the same, understands exponent growth, because the other one is quite for the mathematical way. And an opposite to that is, if I'm good in logical thinking, we have 4 questions and totally well in raw logical thinking. If someone answers these all questions correctly, the possibility increases. The probability increases to select the sustainable form. And that's interesting, because if I'm high in financial literacy and I had high competences in that, the probability in this case decreases. And if I'm good in logical thinking, it increases. That's interesting. But our model shows in that way that we can good and estimate the answers. And finally, for half a minute, some remarks. It's interesting to see, because we see that our participants see sustainability as a utility increasing, and that we think is very interesting and very good. And they also expect, in some cases, a lower return for exchange and sustainability. And as always, the higher the return the sustainable funds get, the higher is the probability for buying it. So maybe we need to analyze if a return on investment and sustainable funds are in some relation. So thank you for your patience, and warm thanks to you all. And yes, we're looking forward for your questions, and Armin and Sabrina are willing to answer as well. So thank you.